Oh, Morrow! He was so close to really shaking up Dragon Ball Super too. It's just a shame that Toyotaro doesn't know how to handle battles on Earth. Hey folks, MasakoX here. Today, we wish to go into detail about what our thoughts were for the overall start and finish point of what was the latest saga of the Dragon Ball Super manga. And the anime, should it ever get the green light to go, as it should really rightly should. As I'm sure that you're aware, the Moro Saga is almost at the end point of the story, with the battle proper pretty much done and dusted. At the time of us writing this very script, chapter 66 has just dropped, and it was a crazy, noisy, bizarre ride. At times, we said that this saga was the best thing that Super had to offer, something that could be absolute clear and categorical evidence that the showrunners were in a positive direction, showing good momentum from the triumphant Broly movie of 2018, and perhaps propelling Dragon Ball into a brand new age of quality. But close to the ending of the same arc, we then started to get a bit worried, as some questionable decisions were being made, as I'm sure you're all aware of. Now that we practically have the whole picture, what's left in this arc is just basically tying up loose ends, such as Whis and the GP having a little tete-a-tete. We would be very curious to see what happens there, as well as having our extensive analysis of Toyble and Toyotaro's Dragon Ball AF done up top. You can check out the video. We can actually now talk more about this saga properly. After going through all 23 main chapters, almost 2 years, I remind you, we can say with certainty that the first 8 chapters, and yeah, even the bits after the end of the Tournament of Power, were rather enjoyable. It was a real breath of fresh air, you know? For the Dragon team to face a villain who was primarily magic-based, gave Goku the heebie-jeebies, and it's really hard to find some big and glaring faults in that first third of the arc. I actually think it's one of the biggest accomplishments of this period of the manga. It's straight up Toyotaro utilizing the Dragon World. It even makes Haverock excited about having Majin Buu doing something. The fact that the Grand Supreme Kai is still there apparently, and plays an active role in Buu's psyche, and the latter's willingness to let the former take the wheel for the arc of the body, is a real sign of character development for this former villain, finally, into perhaps a useful ally or a sage counsel. Maybe even give Shin a good talking to and make him do his job. Now don't get us wrong. When Toriyama started his original Dragon Ball run back in the early 80s, the world that he crafted was, from the get-go, very organic and charming. It naturally unfolded as the story went on, and used whatever was on the author's mind at the time for inspiration and creativity. It felt like a part of Toriyama's mind and passions were being translated to paper, and in turn, shared with us as the audience, as part of some kind of connection between the two parties. It felt very endearing, and it still does. Ultimately though, the world was there to serve the story, not the other way around. If something or someone, mostly someone, wasn't explicitly relevant to the current saga, they would have been pushed aside, and if they did come back, it was only to serve the story, not the other way around. Not for any particular case of love for said character, or the creator to go, oh, you know what, I missed that person, or I wish they were back in, I'll write them in somehow. No, none of that. Toyotaro, on the other hand, seems to like doing the opposite. He has those places and people that he really wants us to meet again or for the first time, and he seeks for any excuse to take us there, even if the excuse is a little flimsy. I'm pretty sure that he knew how much people really wanted to see New Namek again, it being relevant, and how we were eager to know more about the Yardratians, and Goku's time there with them back in the early days of post-Frieza Z. It was all a bit of an enigma, just Goku learnt instant transmission and that's it. So the firm belief we hold here is that the idea of showing their world preceded the actual draft of the story itself. In short, Toyotaro wanted to explore Yardrat. He just needed a valid reason to do so. And what better reason than to do so is for Vegeta going there to strive for the same training that Kakarot did and do it better. Makes sense, and I think we all like that. Cameos from characters like Gia are a testament to what he liked to do in AF. He really likes them cameos. Much to the point, of course, where certain panels of his fan manga look a bit overcrowded. That was a common problem in AF, but in the Moro Saga, we never really felt that happen, which is good. He is learning, albeit very subtly. Cameos from known species and worlds are indeed welcome, even if sometimes they felt a bit unfair or derogatory, and maybe repetitive beyond simple nods or homages. We're looking at you, Yuzun. And granted, it was cool to see more people like Zarbon show up, showing there's actually more than one, but it really didn't add to the tension. It was more of a joke. Maybe catharsis for Vegeta, but that's an issue that we will discuss later, as well as bringing up a much bigger problem of this storyline. The first major scratches on the surface here appeared in Chapter 50, Great Escape, where it was revealed that Morrow's secret third wish to Porunga, something that we were really curious to find out and hadn't been told up until this chapter, was just setting all the galactic prisoners free. It's a little bit strange, we all thought, and I guess it made sense in a way if you consider what kind of person Morrow is to cause chaos, but still, everyone had hoped for something maybe more cunning, something strategic, more in the pursuit of stopping Goku and pals from getting in his way. Releasing prisoners was okay, but it did feel a little less grandiose than we had come to expect from the Ram Man. But nevertheless, it did give us some good stuff, a little Morrow squadron. This did not spoil the overall fun though, it was just a weird choice. Those minor minions did provide a welcome challenge for other Z fighters, give them something to do, when Goku and Vegeta were busy. And this is still one of the best shots of modern Dragon Ball. That shot is one of the best simply because it is giving almost everyone something to do, like we said. What followed this shot was a really cool sequence, which was a delight to see unfold, and, in our humble opinion, worked even better than Resurrection F's only saving grace, the 1,000-soldier battle. Even Chaozu got to do something! For a moment, Toyotaro allowed the heroes to be, well, heroes. And while like many things in the Dragon Ball Super manga would feel like nostalgia bait and maybe repetitive, it did manage to bring a smile to our faces, which is always a good thing. I think Chapter 58, on the whole, will be one of the most warmly regarded tomes in the saga, as a whole, and it will be fun to see animated. But, to be fair, most of the fights in AF were group efforts as well, and a chance to give some characters, like Kibito Kai, their time to shine. So, it's not exactly a brand new trope that Toyotaro had brought to the table in modern Dragon Ball, but again, he was just waiting for an excuse to justify this shot. Hey, Toyotaro, if you're listening, think you can convince your overlords to give Shin this kind of treatment too? Asking for a friend. So, we're talking about the things we liked about Morrow, but where was the straw that kind of broke the goat's back, so to speak? Well, in our opinion, it was the very same chapter, which we just gushed about. Chapter 58. Now, the overall content was the problem. It was a great chapter, but it was the very ending of it, those last 2 pages, which ultimately began the wavering doubt of said saga, Goku's return to Earth. Of course, it wasn't as apparent back then as it is now, hindsight being 2020 in that, of course. But Goku's second fight with Morrow was kind of boring, you know? When compared to their first encounter, where the old Warlock had mostly had his trickery at his disposal, this second fight was painfully predictable, and felt like stalling for time. Ironically, waiting for Vegeta for once instead of waiting for Goku, with Morrow revealing to be in control the entire time. He was just toying with Goku. This second fight had realistically no challenge at all. Then we had Vegeta stepping in, and although he was giving the monster some decent beatings and challenges, it really gave us some flashbacks to the days of semi-perfect Cell. The only exception being here is that Vegeta doesn't make our situation with Morrow worse. And even Vegeta's trash talking feels like too much of a cliche. And don't get me started on that thumbs up shot. I was personally hopeful at the time that it was meaning something good, but way too many of you out there were going, he's gonna lose, isn't he? And I have to admit, you were right. And sure, technically the prince hadn't lost due to his arrogance this time. It still felt like it was stalling for time though, and at the time, a waste of his character arc. All of those months of him training on Yardrat were pointless, we thought at the time. The next moment of decline for us was Morrow absorbing 7-3 in Chapter 61 in a rather unorthodox manner. It started our trajectory towards the lowest point that this arc had to offer, not only drastically changing the memorable design of the villain, but also taking a lot of the originality, at least for Dragon Ball standards, that this fight had. Basically, Morrow and the fight just became a clone of any other fight, and him being a clone of Cell, or any other beings with large brows and a sharp jaw, which is to say a lot of people. The saving grace throughout all of this, though, was indeed seeing Mirus finally stepping into action, really at the against of his own life in Chapter 63, fulfilling his destiny. the way he fought with the Ram Man was far more entertaining than Goku's second attempt at fighting him, and it seemed like he had actually sealed the deal and left the evildoer for Goku to finish, right? Right? Well, we all know that that wasn't the case, and due to Goku's foolishness, we were treated to another power boost for the villain, aka Super Perfect Morrow time. But to Toyotaro's credit, the seed of Morrow's missing arm was planted in previous chapters, and it was something that you could deduce, and when you actually find out about it, the payoff unfolding, it felt JoJo-worthy of you going, oh yeah! Almost. And while Goku's behaviour was very unsatisfying, Morrow's final planet form was pretty memorable, as he became a literal force, an element. It is a nice change of pace for the final boss not to be a standard humanoid enemy all the time, as well as the fact that it was a group victory against Morrow, no doubts there. And even though Goku brought the finishing blow, it all came together behind him. Toyotaro did a good job to show that Vegeta, the Dragon Team, Grand Supreme Kai, Oob, and even Jarko were instrumental and necessary in beating the Ram Menace once and for all. If one of them were missing, things would have been much harder or even impossible for Goku to overcome. You can truly say that Goku did not get the sole credit for this win. It felt good. Not extraordinary, but more than enough to slightly mend that goat's back. Not enough to hide all the scars though. So before we get to our conclusions, we should discuss the characters in this arc, starting with the newcomers. Morrow, the main baddie of this arc. You guys know that we like him. He isn't the most original or deep villain in pop culture, and his monologuing sometimes gets a little bit too close to AF villain territory for our liking. Not to mention his semi-ultimate form, but that doesn't destroy his presence or reputation in our eyes. And yes, he started to take on an awful lot of tropes from Perfect Cell later on, post chapter 63, but at the end of the day, after rereading the whole thing, you can actually see how dead set he was on his goal, from the start, to survive as an ultimate life form. Morrow was always 3 steps ahead of our heroes, preparing for his losses, willing to see that there are beings physically stronger than him, beings that he actually had to trick in different ways in order to win. Really break their spirit. They were stronger than him, but it still wasn't enough to win. Oh, that's gotta hurt. He always had a backup plan too, and although the whole eating of 7-3 felt a bit like jumping the shark, it was still entertaining to see his schemes pull themselves off. Also, his going from Planet Eater to a planet himself, who slowly collapsed into something that could be described as an idiot god, a being of godly power, but with a very limited sense of self, just like the Lovecraftian Azathoth, losing his most defining trait, his cunning, in the process. There is something poetic in the way that he lost, and his motivation becoming simpler, without too much pseudo-philosophical babble. It makes him far better than any of Toyotaro's other villains to date. Next is Mirus, the trainee angel, and I think the best way to describe him here is that he's the Goten of angels, and I mean that in the nicest way possible, of course. What we mean by the Goten of angels is that he is an angelic cinnamon bun, who is actually really unfit to land the role of an angel and impartial mediator. He just cares too much. He's the anti-Zamasu, and even though his friendship with Goku seemed kind of artificial at times, you have to love the breadcrumbs that Toyotaro had been putting in front of us from the very beginning, so that we, the readers, could deduce his identity earlier on. And although his erasure hit the same story beats as 16's demise, it still felt like a complete package. The fact that he isn't coming back, we sincerely hope, is a major sign of consequence. Goku almost let Mirus' actions be in vain. There's not really much else to say, actually. Mirus was a fun character who even allowed Whis to show us some more emotions. And speaking of character development, Jarko. Now you can hate him or you can love him. Jarko got a major increase of character development in this arc. Finally. Stepping into the role and showing bravery for once, which we really wouldn't expect him to express. We really did not expect much from him. We think that it might be due to Mirus' fate, who, despite Jarko's petty jealousy towards him, might have actually been one of his closest friends, and it would have hurt and made him do something. And I hope that this change is here to stay, to show that Jarko isn't all just about talking the talk. But we do know that lasting changes are sort of problematic in Dragon Ball. Right, Master Roshi? As for the last two, we are going to be discussing Vegeta and Goku. For the Prince, it was a very eventful arc. From him making peace with the Namekians, through learning some inner peace with the Ardratians, to then cementing his role as the ultimate support. Now, I know it isn't exactly something that we would have realistically wanted for the Prince of All Saiyans to become, ultimate support, but at the end of the day, you do have to admit that there is something cool about seeing Vegeta doing what he does best, and when he isn't thinking about his personal gains, or pride, or reputation. Once again, it seems like a very good beginning for seeing the end of Z Vegeta. Now, we need to go to Goku. During the vast majority of this saga, Goku wasn't all that bad. He hadn't done anything really that stupid, up until giving a senzu bean to a character that terrified him just a few months ago. This felt like a character having to serve the story, and seemed pretty bad at the time. Even if Goku felt strong enough to stop Morrow, you could say that Goku here was kind of generic. Sort of like how he was in the first arc of Dragon Ball. He did admit to his mistake though, but it's still not enough. I feel that there needs to be more consequences laid before him to get the message across. Maybe said consequences will be the reason of him being maybe a bit melancholic at the end of Z. He can't see Beerus and Whis anymore, which then takes us to Oob. And I cannot believe that I'm saying this, but Toyotaro actually fixed a lot of stuff that was sort of iffy about Goku's departure with Oob at the end of Dragon Ball Z, going that way back. Right now, thanks to Chapter 66 of Super, it's no longer simply Goku's selfish desire to train a strong person, it's Goku repaying a debt for saving Earth. It's conserving the Grand Supreme Kai's legacy, all of that power not going to waste. And I'm pretty sure that the Grand Supreme Kai would have made his request to talk to Oob, as he will probably fall back into Boo's consciousness in the future. And then maybe Goku can nurture someone of divine power, a good making up for maybe not talking to Beerus and Whis anymore. And of course, he could still maybe train Pan with Oob, but who knows? Maybe we're going to see that too. So what are the biggest flaws and graces of the Morrow arc? And as we mentioned in our Dragon Ball AF script, Toyotaro seems too attached to either his old work or Toriyama's existing work. He wants to please the fans by enacting the same feelings as before, but he goes by the same schematics and story beats that we've seen before, which causes us to see the story as repetitive. We're not stupid, we remember all of that stuff. And luckily, he does often manage to at least mix up the circumstances enough to add some new visuals. Now, we don't know if this is maybe fully his fault, that he's entirely to blame, or maybe this is something he's either told to do by Toriyama or Shueisha, and he just doesn't have the courage to push back yet. But that's probably what's keeping him from being truly great. His biggest grace is how he utilizes the Dragon World. But this can also be used against him, because if he relies too much on the old stuff, and doesn't try to come up with anything new at the same time, it could lead to, again, being derivative. It's actually ironic that the best and worst things about this saga are two sides of the same coin, utilizing the legacy of Dragon Ball. But what do we think? Did he manage to stick the landing for the Moro Saga? Admittedly, it did get a bit bumpy at the end, but yeah, we think he did. The arc is good, probably the best out of the entire Dragon Ball Super collection, but it could have been great. And that's the biggest pain to have. To see that this pleasant train journey was just inches from becoming a train wreck at times. But still, if Toyotaro can learn from this, grow from this, maybe the future isn't so bleak. Toei, just get off your high horse and animate this saga, okay? Come on. But what do you folks think? Do you feel that the Morrow Saga was great, or did you feel like it was just too samey, not fit for high regard? Leave a comment below, and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!